Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this. It's the sixth in our six-part series. Six-part series, sixth and the sixth. So, webinar series on helping you with your digital transformation. This week, we've got a great session for information that you need to know. Why cloud computing is important in your world, is essential in your world. And I've got two great guests from one of our partner companies, Signet Tech. And I will introduce our speakers right now. Our first speaker is Mayank Signet, and Mayank helps businesses optimize the use of technology while balancing the implications to people and process. He has spent more than a decade assisting clients to achieve success across the enterprise through digital transformation. Mayank strongly believes an excellent customer service experience is the key to success and spends his time to ensure he exceeds client expectations. Mayank is experienced in requirements gathering, analysis, and consultation for secure digital business transformation and minimizing cyber risks using cloud service providers. Now, after Mayank, we'll be hearing from Ashish Laxman. And Ashish is a cybersecurity professional with more than a decade of experience focusing on cybersecurity strategy, vulnerability management, cyber threat analysis, and incident response. He has led multiple cross-function teams in building the best-in-class solutions for cybersecurity programs in financial services, Internet of Things, and the telecommunications industry. Ashish has several leading industry certifications such as CISSP, CEH, AWS Solutions Architect and Security, and Certified Incident Handler. Now, after the two great speakers, we'll have questions as well. So I'd invite you to put any questions you have in the chat, and we will ask them after the session. So Mayank, I'll ask you to take it away.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Morning, everyone. So before we start, I just wanted to give you, an update that this presentation is a high-level overview for advanced users. I mean to say, it's a high-level overview, and for advanced user, it might be just a rehash. So that's, just a disclaimer before we start. So Peter already introduced what the topic is about. So let me just give you a brief introduction about Signet Tech. Me and Ashish, we both represent Signet Tech. It's a leading IT managed service provider helping small to mid-sized businesses in digital transformation. So that's a little write-up about our company. It basically what we do is we provide IT support services to businesses whose main forte is not IT. So means companies who don't have IT expertise, we come in, we take over their IT infrastructure, computers, servers, applications, and we manage that for those companies. That's our job here at Signet Tech is. We'll skip this slide where Peter already introduced us, so we'll directly move on to our objective. So in this webinar, what we'll be discussing is what is cloud computing, what are benefits of using cloud computing services, who are the major cloud computing services provider within the market, some big ones, some small ones, and along with popular cloud services and how to secure your cloud deployment. So these are the main topics that we'll be discussing today. So let's start with our first slide. So first of all, we'll try to understand what cloud computing is, the term cloud computing. So a technology that allows you to leverage someone else's computing services over the internet. So that's very basic definition. And I'll take an example, very basic example just for your visualization. You can visualize your email server or your web hosting server. Traditionally or earlier, before the emergence of cloud computing, they were the most famous servers hosted for almost all of the business till a few years back on-premise. On-premise means they were hosted within the offices. But now email and web hosting servers done on cloud. So we are going to discuss on the reasons why we moved from on-premise to cloud. Some of the cloud computing technology services offered are virtual servers, storage, database, networking, and application. Again, we'll be discussing all these in detail once we move forward from here. So I'll start with on the left side, you'll see on-demand and pay-as-you-go service to host servers and application. what exactly it means is. So this is the most fascinating part of this technology. That's why this technology picked up so fast in market and still going, pretty strong. Businesses, organizations have the freedom to move their capital expenditure into operational expenditure, which is, comparatively smaller in today's time. Businesses want to avoid capital expenditure, and just if you look back since the pandemic started in 2020, all the companies, either small, mid, or big, everyone is trying to avoid capital expenditure. My bad, sorry. Capital expenditure. That's what they're trying to do. And in order to do that, they are moving their capital expenditure into operational expenditure. So that's what cloud computing allows you to do. So in times of COVID, it has become all the more important, and it becomes all the more important times of COVID. So access resources from anywhere. On the right side you see. So as the name suggests, it's pretty straightforward. We can access any resource, computing resource from any part of the world. So very important aspect of this technology. This has been found very useful during the pandemic, when last year physical world, means offices, public spaces, were shutting down due to pandemic. This brought an extra limelight to the cloud computing and kind of forced digital transformation to businesses and organizations which were earlier reluctant in adapting to cloud computing. So this is, these two are the most fascinating part of this technology. The next part is run your infrastructure more efficiently. So in order to measure the efficiency, we need to visualize the situation before the arrival of cloud computing. So most of the servers or applications were hosted on site on some kind of physical server, maybe on one server, on multiple servers. It depends on the situation and scenario. But there were many limitations of running those servers on premise. Limitation of cost, limitation of having resources who has to manage those servers, and limitations of scalability. It's not that easy to scale those servers. The biggest one was that of hardware failure. Under normal circumstances, we have backup for each. Under normal circumstances, it's not possible to have backup server for each server. Only critical servers were having backup servers. That was the situation back in the day. So when a server fails, we have to wait, or our work stops until a replacement servers arrive. But once the cloud computing has come into the picture, we don't have to even think about hardware failure. Again, it's a responsibility of cloud service provider. So this has led us, increase productivity, performance, and reliability. I described, on top 4 points. It all helped us in increasing, our performance and reliability. So that's what cloud computing is. So moving on to next slide. So this will tell us more about benefits of having cloud computing. So what are benefits of cloud computing and how it can help small to medium-sized businesses? So cloud computing is a big shift in mindset of businesses and how they think about IT resources. I'll be talking about 5 common benefits, on your screen, of which organizations are turning towards cloud computing, starting with operational excellence, what it means by operational excellence. So basically manage your own data center or server rooms. When I say data center means companies who start initially, they have their server rooms, the racks, servers. But eventually when companies mature, they move from one phase to another phase. They want to have a data center either within their organization, or they outsource it to, someone outside. So managing your data center or server rooms require a lot of racking, hardware setup, and this all depends on your resources, and it's pretty time consuming. So what cloud computing does, it helps you to automate the process of building those infrastructure, automatically. You can move to cloud. You can add infrastructure with just few click of buttons, within your Windows browser, computer and browser. You can just click few buttons and servers will be created. For example, a file server. It's never been easier since the arrival of cloud computing. Second one is cost optimization. So cloud computing eliminates the capital expenditure of buying hardware or software. And again, also managing your data server center or your server room. Capital expenditure, again, is converted into operational expenditure. You don't have to think about managing rack of servers, electricity, power, and cooling in a data center or server rooms. So those all things or costs have been eliminated on with the onset of cloud computing. The third one is performance. Cloud computing services, offered by AWS and other providers run on worldwide network of secure data center, which is equivalent to our server rooms, but again on a larger scale. They use best-in-class technology, best-in-class hardware, great benefit versus running application on a single data center or on a single server room with very limited resources. So again, your performance drastically change, once we move on to cloud computing services. The next one, the fourth one, is security. Major cloud service provider offers a wide variety of policies and technologies that help in strengthening the security posture of data and infrastructure that are hosted in cloud. Major cloud providers spend millions of dollars to improve security posture of infrastructure, and compared to SMB, like small to mid-sized businesses, they have very limited resources on either on security or on infrastructure. So those things are mitigated by cloud service provider. So they implement best practices to make sure our infrastructure and data is secured and safe. So fifth and the last one, reliability. So that's cloud computing makes data backup, and in case of disaster recovery and business continuity much more easier as compared to traditional servers or servers that we were running on premise earlier. So cloud computing offers services that you can use for mirror data on multiple redundant sites, and it's less expensive in maintaining data center by themselves. So multiple redundant sites means once we run our company, I mean to say a small or mid-sized businesses, they have their own server rooms. The data is sitting just on one site in your office. But cloud computing gives you ability to make it a copy of data, on different location due to some kind of disaster. What happened, if something bad happened to your office, due to some reason you're not having access to your office. So cloud computing, data backup on different regions will help you that you can recover your data very fast and with much of ease. So yeah, these are the benefits of cloud computing versus traditional computing and how small businesses can take leverage of that. So let's move on to our next slide. So basically, who are the major cloud computing services provider? On the right side, you will see a graph from Gartner. Gartner is a big research company, and they call it Magic Quadrant. So these three are the leaders: Amazon, Microsoft, Google. So these three are the leaders in cloud computing. Other players, if you see, like Alibaba, Oracle, IBM, Tencent, Rackspace, VMware. So these, even Salesforce, these are different cloud service provider within the space. But industry leaders are, only these three: so AWS from Amazon, Azure from Microsoft, and Google Cloud from Cloud. Some interesting facts, about AWS. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, everyone. Netflix is the most common application, we watch on nowadays. So whole of Netflix infrastructure is based on AWS. That's a fact I was amazed to know. Another one is AWS constitutes about 13.5 billion in revenue in 2020. So that's approximately 12% of total revenue of Amazon. So that's a significant amount, Amazon Web Services bring into Amazon. So if we move on to Microsoft Azure, that brings in about 14 point something billion, $14.14 billion. Its revenue is more than AWS, but again, in Microsoft, they call it intelligent cloud. It's not just Azure. There are different products within cloud strategy. That's why its revenue is a little bit more. There is, it's not the data for Azure itself is not very clear. Google Cloud, it brings in about 11 billion in revenue in 2020 for its cloud services. So these are the three major players. AWS dominates the cloud space. So what AWS is, the market leader. AWS built this platform. Basically, Amazon built AWS for itself, and but later it found to be very useful and launched it as a full-fledged product in 2006. Breadth and depth of services offered by AWS is around 200. So they have 200 services, much more as compared to Google or Microsoft. The only reason is they started very early in 2006, and since then they have been adding different services, within their profile or domain. It's pretty, developer friendly as compared to how much training you need to have on traditional system, but on cloud, it's not that difficult. It's easy, and you can get along with that much more easier as compared to older systems. So yeah, these are the computing major cloud service providers. So moving on to different types of computing infrastructure, either it's traditional and cloud. So these are two kinds of computing infrastructure we have. Traditional is basically it's on-premise, the older infrastructure, the earlier which used to have everything in our data center or small server rooms. That's the traditional way of having IT infrastructure. So cloud computing they can be categorized to three broad categories: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. What we'll do in the next slide is we'll understand each four of these services, traditional and three cloud computing, using a pizza analogy. So it will be much more easier to understand what these services are all about. So yeah, let's understand my pizza analogy. So today, let's assume today we have a football game at 8 p.m. and we have a couple of friends at our home and who are hungry and they want to have pizza. So there can be different scenarios for having pizza. So I'll first of all give you scenarios for having pizza. After that, I'll try to correlate it with different services, traditional IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So on-premise, what happens is just like you have to make pizza from scratch. You buy supplies for pizza like dough, cheese, veggies, meat. You assemble them, you bake them, and then you eat it. That's how your traditional system or your pizza works. The next one is frozen pizza. So frozen pizza is comparable to IaaS, infrastructure as a service. You go to Costco, someone else prepares the pizza for you, but you bake it and you get the drinks and you do the dishes. So that is your infrastructure as a service. Next one will be platform as a service. Here you order pizza from Pizza Hut, someone else bake and deliver the pizza to your door. However, you must still figure out the drinks and washing the dishes. That's what your platform as a service is. The most easiest and the best one is software as a service. Is you dine out, you go in a sports bar, you get the pizza, you get the drinks, someone take care of your dishes. So basically you are the user. That's the easiest and the best best example of cloud computing, software as a service. So let me just try to correlate this pizza analogy, how it's related to IT infrastructure. So on-premise, the first one, traditional on-premise, where you build everything from scratch, the pizza. So in a similar way, we need to rent out our space in data center, or we have to build our own server room. We have to add our racks, we have to add our server, we have to add our power supply. So basically we are doing everything from scratch and we have to, build it on our own. That's what traditional or on-premise server is. Moving on to infrastructure, where we bought the, pizza from Costco. We just heat it and we get the drinks and dishes. So if you look at this one here, we rent out the IT infrastructure from service provider. It can be Google, it can be AWS, it can be Microsoft. So we rent out the IT infrastructure from service provider as per our requirement. But again, just the infrastructure, not the platform or operating system where the applications or softwares will be running. That's what infrastructure as a service is. The third one, platform as a service. So platform as a service where we ordered pizza from Pizza Hut. Someone else bakes and delivers the pizza to us, but still we need to figure out drinks and washing the dishing part. So here, cloud service provider gives you the IT infrastructure, means server, and also manages the operating system for you that is running on the server. So we as a customer just need to install the applications or software that we need to use. So again, infrastructure as a service and platform as a service are closely related. The only difference in one of them is in platform as a service, we get the operating system also. In infrastructure as a service, we don't get the operating system, but we get IT infrastructure in both of them. Software as a service, the most easy one. You go out in a sports bar, you dine, and everything is done by someone else. So very good example is Dropbox, Office 365, Slack. So here the only user is the person who logs in from the Windows browser and use the services. You don't have to worry about anything, either the infrastructure or the operating system or anything. It's just application is running on it. You go and you take access of the application. So yeah, these were the four broad categories of traditional computing and cloud computing. So moving on to next slide, I'll pass it over to Ashish. Ashish will be helping us, taking care of proceeding from here. Ashish.
Cool. Thank you, Meg. So next we're going to discuss about the different cloud deployment or cloud computing architecture. There are three different ways to deploy cloud services. It can be a public cloud, a private cloud, or a hybrid cloud model. Everyone's needs are different and not one type of cloud service deployment is right for everyone. So let's understand about public cloud. So public cloud is owned and operated by a third-party cloud service provider like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft. Customers of these public cloud providers access the cloud services using their browser or software applications built by these cloud providers. So moving on to private cloud, this refers to a cloud compute infrastructure like servers, which are used exclusively by a single business. The infrastructure can be physically located somewhere in company's data center or a small server room. Some companies also pay a third-party data center to own a rack or a space. And here, all the services and infrastructure are maintained on a private network. Next is hybrid cloud. This combines features of both public and private clouds and basically allows data and applications to be shared between the clouds. So for instance, some business have traditional applications running on their on-site data center, but they cannot immediately lift and shift everything to cloud once they make a decision to use cloud. In that case, they use a hybrid architecture where they migrate everything that they can to cloud to leverage the cloud benefits, but still have few applications running on their on-site data center. Moving on to the next slide. So in this slide, I'm going to talk about who shares the responsibility of securing the infrastructure hosted in the cloud. So if we made a decision to migrate our email infrastructure that was earlier hosted in our on-site data center, and then move to a SaaS-based application like Office 365 for emails, for example. So now who's responsible for managing the security of the servers where this email server is running? Who's responsible to manage access to this email application? These are some of the questions that we should think about before we plan to migrate to cloud. Cloud security is always a shared responsibility between customers, such as Signet, ourselves, or business such as yours, and the cloud service providers like AWS. So as we move towards SaaS services, or like moving from an infrastructure as a service to a SaaS service, the responsibility shifts from a customer to the cloud service provider. So another example here is if you use infrastructure as a service to host a virtual file server in the cloud, such as AWS. In this case, the AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud. What I mean by this is that AWS is responsible for managing the hardware and software that is used to build these virtual servers, support the network devices that works behind the scenes, and that helps you to connect the different services or infrastructure. And also they are responsible to secure physical access to the data center where all these servers are hosted. The customer's responsibility here will be to secure the application running on the server. They will be also responsible to control access to the AWS portal or the user interface that basically allows you to click through different options to build these infrastructure. Customers are also responsible for applying updates to the operating system running on these virtual server and also secure the data used by this server. So I'll conclude this slide by saying that moving to cloud doesn't always mean that securing the infrastructure is the sole responsibility of the cloud service provider. We can outsource a lot of things to the provider, but it all depends on what cloud compute services we choose. Moving on to the next slide. Thank you. So in the next few slides, I'll go over a few popular services offered by AWS. Other cloud service providers offer similar services, but with different names. But these are the most common services used when you migrate your infrastructure to cloud. I'll go over each of the services in detail in further slides. Move into the next slide, please. Thank you. In the next slide, in this slide, the first service that I'm going to talk about is Elastic Cloud Compute. It's popular by the name EC2. This is like a virtual server hosted in the cloud. You can run Windows, Mac, any Linux operating system like Red Hat, Ubuntu-based servers in the cloud. You can configure different configurations such as storage. It needs a CPU and memory that you need on the server. And it's also on demand, and it's pay-by-hour service. And basically, you can just terminate the instance when it's not in use. So all of this benefits helps you to save a lot of money, where, for example, if you were in an on-premise environment and you had a requirement to have a file server, and for that you got a Dell server, paid thousands of dollars for it, and then spent additional money and time to set it up. And maybe after 4 months or so, you moved on to a new application, suppose Google Drive or Dropbox, and now you don't need this file server that you got before. Now, the physical server that you got last time is just sitting idle, and all of the money that you spent building the server is just added to your sunk cost. So this is one of the benefits in moving to cloud, where you don't need to worry about buying a physical server or setting it up. With just few clicks, you can just get a server with your configuration and a pre-installed operating system. Thank you. So next is Amazon S3. So S3 stands for a simple storage server, and this is used for data storage. You can use it to store files or pictures, and it's very similar to Google Drive or Dropbox. You can upload a file up to 5 terabytes at a time. And if you would like to access your data on S3 from your browser, you can just go to your browser and you can just go to the URL that you can see on the screen. So in that, and in the URL, you have to specify the bucket name that you have set up. So what is an S3 bucket? So S3 bucket is like a container with a unique name that you set up initially, and you upload all your data to this bucket. So that's what bucket name is there. So how can this help your business? It can help businesses in replacing your on-premise file server. It's a highly secure service. You don't have to worry about backing up the data, as AWS covers it all. And similar to EC2, it's a pay-as-you-go service. Moving on to the next slide. Lambda. So Lambda is a platform as a service offered by AWS. Quite a few people might have heard about serverless technology. It's a common buzzword these days. So what does it mean? In serverless, the idea is if you don't need to configure the server or manage it or worry about installing operating system or anything. You just need your code or application and just upload it to the cloud provider, and then it just runs. So Lambda is one of the serverless service offered by AWS. And again, this is also an on-demand service and a pay-as-you-go service. And it's cheaper than to run an EC2 server or a physical server in your on-premise environment. That was like all of this was discussed in the previous slides here. So another component of Lambdas are called functions. I don't want to get into too technical here on how Lambdas work, but just want to say these functions are the smallest component that you have to set up, and it runs and basically gives you the result that you're looking for. So how can this help your business? Many businesses use Lambda to host their websites. You can use it to process data at a very low cost. Moving on to the next service. So Snow services. This service is used to migrate data from your on-prem infrastructure to cloud. If a business decides to move to cloud, but their internal network has some bandwidth restriction where it takes a long time to upload any files or images to AWS S3, for them, Snow services are great. These are devices that AWS can ship to your address, and then you just have to connect it to your file server, for example, where all your data resides, and you can just transfer it to the device and then ship it back to AWS. This way, you can move everything to S3 without impacting your network. AWS offers different types of Snow devices. It can range from a small hard disk shaped device called Snow Cone that can hold up to 8 terabytes of data to a big shipping container that can hold up 10 terabytes of data. So next up is Identity Access Management, that is IAM. So the IAM is used to control access to all the AWS services. You can configure multi-factor authentication, such as SMS code, Google Authenticator, other than logging into an application using just your username or password. You can also use Facebook or Google to authenticate to these AWS portal. Basically, IAM is a centralized location where you can manage all the users that can access your AWS portal. And also, you can give access to your cloud infrastructure you have built using IAM. You can also set up single sign-on, which helps your users to log into an application once, and then they can access other AWS services without re-entering the password again. And that's what single sign-on means here, where you only have to log in once. Moving on to the database services. This is where you can migrate your on-prem SQL server to Amazon database services, like a relational database service, that is RDS. Again, here also, I'm not going too technical on this, but just want to share that there are two types of database services offered by AWS. One is non-relational, and the second is relational database services. The non-relational database or NoSQL database are a faster, scalable, and a flexible type of service. And one of the example of a fully managed non-relational database service offered by AWS is called DynamoDB. Compared to a non-relational database, relational databases are generally more reliable and highly consistent. And there are many popular databases like MySQL, PostgreSQL that is supported by AWS. Moving on to the next slide. So this is one of our last slides. So, okay, so now suppose we have made a decision to move to cloud, or we are already using cloud resources. So we want to know, how can we assess the security of the cloud infrastructure we have deployed, or how can we know how secure these third-party cloud providers are? Sometimes the lack of transparency into what technology or tactics that have been implemented by these cloud providers to secure this infrastructure is a challenge. So to solve this problem, we have two tools from the Cloud Security Alliance that can be used to assess the cloud security. One is the Consensus Assessment Initiative Questionnaire, and the other is Cloud Control Matrix. And before talking about these two tools, I just want to share that the Cloud Security Alliance, the organization behind building both of these tools, is a leading organization dedicated to defining and raising awareness of secure computing best practices. Moving on to CAIQ, the CAIQ offers a series of yes or no questions to a cloud consumer or a cloud auditor who may want to ask these cloud providers to assess the cloud provider's compliance to an industry best practices. Many major cloud providers like AWS share their results from the CAIQ assessment publicly. So anybody can go to their website and just review their assessment, results from their assessment, and can get an assurance that they are following the best cloud security practices. Now, about the cloud control matrix, it is a cybersecurity control framework for cloud computing. It's basically a spreadsheet that lists 16 domains covering all key aspects of cloud technology and lists out items that are required to secure the cloud infrastructure. It indicates whether who's responsible for securing the infrastructure, whether it's a customer or whether it's a cloud service provider. So with the help of CCM, you can determine if you have covered everything to secure your cloud's infrastructure. So I would like to conclude this slide by saying both of these tools, CAIQ and CCM, both are the de facto standards for assessing the security of any cloud infrastructure. So yeah, I mean, that's all I have for today. Before we open for questions, I just want to share that at Signet Tech, we are experts in cloud migration, and we can help in your cloud journey. So please don't hesitate to contact us. You can see your contact details in the slide. And yeah, I mean, we are open for questions now.
Well, thank you, Ashish. That was a wonderful presentation, fellows. I know personally I learned a lot. Some of the explanations were quite simple, but some of the explanations were, concepts that I've heard a lot about, but I really didn't understand to that extent. So job well done. And we will open it up to questions. I do have a few. Before I get into questions, let me just remind folks, this is again the sixth of our sixth presentation in our 6 in the 6 series, the Ease Digital Translation. It's brought to you by Signet, these great folks who've done the great job today. Sonic IT and Sam Eastman is with us today. And my company, Haggart Media Group. My name is Peter Haggart. So look for us all in the future. And I believe events like this will be posted in time online too with the companies. So I do have a couple of questions for you folks, and please jump in, whoever feels best to take it. How do I know if my company's ready to migrate to the cloud, or if I'm not using the cloud now, what are the signs I need to start using the cloud?
Sure. So there are different ways you can make sure. So it's not like cloud is for everybody. So it can be for if your company is growing and you feel there are within your, and you were hosting all your service in an on-premise environment, and there are resource restrictions that you have, and maybe there are not many people that can manage the servers that are hosted on-premise. So for them, cloud is a very good option where you don't have to worry about these issues, where you don't have to worry about the cooling or the power supply. Maybe in your on-premise environment, there are power cuts maybe, and you don't have a backup or something. So you don't have to worry about all these things if you move to cloud. So yeah, again, you have to assess your situation. You have to see, okay, where do you want to go to in the future? And for that, you have to strategize and see if cloud would be a better option than hosting a service in an on-premise environment.
So just if you can you give me some idea on cost? I know cost for an individual company would vary compared, considering what they're doing. But how do they cost cloud, and what are likely expectations?
So sure. So like I said, so suppose if I take an example of the Elastic Cloud Compute. So the smallest instance that it offers, it's a T2 micro, and I think it cost 0.0018 cents per hour. So, and that's it. I mean, you just build it and you just pay by hour. And all these services offered by AWS is like pay as you go, and it's hourly based. So and they have a good website online. It's, I think, AWS Calculator something. So you can exactly say, okay, this is what the service I want, and probably maybe say, okay, and this I would run this service for a day, and you can exactly find out the cost for it.
So it's time as opposed to
Time,
size of documents or those kinds of things.
yes, time and the type and how much data you're trying to store on the server. Like suppose for S3, which is their data storage,
Yes.
it goes by the file size, or the terabyte or gigabyte
Okay.
of storage that you will be using. Yes.
So if I'm storing data, am I paying for 24 hours a day?
So it depends. No, not so that they follow a different model. It goes by the storage you will use. Maybe 5 terabyte per. It goes by 5 terabyte, and also it goes by how much data you are uploading to them, to their service. So yeah, I mean, so again, going to that cloud calculator would help you to determine how much it will cost you to maybe upload a 5 terabyte of files.
Okay, that's a great tip. I'm sorry, I don't mean to confuse things.
Now, Peter, let me just make it a little bit clear for you. So Ashish, when he was talking about EC2 instance and when storage, so let's take an analogy to example, a car. When we are running a car, we are burning fuel. So in that scenario, we will be charged based on the time, for how much time we are burning the fuel.
Right.
But in storage, it's just like a storage, you rent out a space. There you're not burning, you're not consuming anything. That's why it's just a fixed cost. Does it make sense?
Yes, no, that's very good. Thank you very much. I want to ask you, I know when we first started talking about the cloud, there was a lot of reticence, a lot of concern about security, and a lot of it was just people really just didn't understand so much. And there were issues with cloud migration. Now with cloud migration, I'm sure things are a lot smoother, but what can you do to ensure your migration is as seamless as possible?
Sure. So first of all, you have to definitely have a strategy, and that's where companies like us, Signet, come into the picture. Uh, so we help companies to build this strategy. You cannot just maybe think today, okay, we have to move to cloud and just migrate everything to cloud, because there are security concerns as well, right? You have to plan all the network on how you're gonna give access to your employees. How are you gonna give access to the traffic to the public? So all that requires a lot of strategy. So again, that's where companies like us can help you out in strategizing.
Okay, that's great. Um, do cloud use and cloud services help with compliance? And I'm thinking of industries like healthcare, insurance.
Yes. So for compliance, yeah, I mean, so like if you go for insurance, right? So they follow different compliance program where uh, maybe they have to be PCI compliant, or for healthcare, they have to be HIPAA compliant. So
Right.
all these cloud providers are already compliant on all this. And they also, with all these compliance, it's also required, okay, there are different controls that you need to make sure that you have on in your environment, like logging. You make sure you restrict access to only your people and not give it to everybody. So it's very easy. If you move to cloud, you can control all this very easily. You can make sure you are logging everything very easily. It's just with few clicks, you can make sure that logging is enabled on all of your servers. So these are few things that can help you to be compliant with all these HIPAA and PCI based programs. So yeah, definitely, it helps you in all these programs, and it helps the healthcare and the insurance industries as well.
Yeah, that's great to know that if they're compliant ahead of time, it gives you a jump right off the bat. Very good. Very
Yes.
good. Any other questions from the floor? Any other questions from our participants today?
Hi, I may have a question. This is Siddhant.
Please.
Siddhant.
Hey, thank you. Very good presentation, first of all, very informative. Thank you so much. And so my question is, so I came to know like a lot about AWS and Microsoft and all the big players. So what do you guys think about Rogers also providing like data center services? They have 13 data centers across Canada. And when we talk about compliance, like if there are companies that are required to keep the data in Canada, so Rogers particularly like keeps the data in Canada and it's not outsourced anywhere outside Canada. For example, like most of the companies you mentioned, maybe store the data in the US as well. So just wanted to know what are your thoughts about like the local company like Rogers in this market?
Sure, sure. So I think we didn't go much more in detail about how AWS or these big cloud providers can help you out in this specific scenario. So let's go first by Rogers. So sure, I mean, if Rogers looking at all the features and also the tools that I mentioned, the CAIQ at the end and the cloud control matrix, if you assess these cloud providers and you think, okay, Rogers is good for your use case, yeah, go for it. And if it all depends on the cost also, right? How much does it cost you to move to that or use that service? So you can do that. But with AWS and these big cloud providers, you can be very region specific there also. So you can exactly say, hey, you can go to the portal. You can say, okay, build this instance in the Toronto region. So basically, AWS is worldwide. They have multiple data center, and you can specifically say, okay, build this instance in the Toronto region, build second instance in the EU region. So that way, that's how you can be compliant, where you're saying, okay, you are storing all the data in that specific region itself, and you don't move it. And this is all compliant also, and it's compliant, it's GDPR compliant and everything. So you can get help from a big cloud providers as well.
Yeah, that's a very important piece when it comes to emails, for instance, particularly in Europe. You know, they have to be stored on the continent for privacy,
Yeah.
New privacy laws, which are more stringent than our own.
Yep.
Very good. Any other questions, folks?
Hi guys, I have a question. So great presentation. So can you guys, like Ashish or Mayank, shed some light on how companies can avoid the risk of vendor lock-ins? Like let's say I lock in with the vendor and they know that I don't have a choice. Their service quality of service decrease. They can raise up the prices and all that. Can you shed some light on that? Yeah.
Yes. So that's, yeah, I mean, that's a very good question about and companies do think about multi-cloud environment as well, where, okay, if the AWS services doesn't work, they can easily shift from AWS to cloud. So it's pretty easy with this, because like one of the benefits that Mike mentioned in the initial slide was you can automate everything. You can just use, so again, I don't know how much you heard about these tools like Terraform or Ansible. So these are like scripts that you can write, and it's like cloud friendly. You can run it on AWS or you can run it on GCP. So if and you can, maybe suppose you were thinking about using AWS initially, and you use these Ansible or Terraform script to build your infrastructure, and you think, okay, this is getting expensive, you want to move to GCP, you just have to change few lines in the code and then you can just point it to GCP. So with this cloud and using these automated feature, you don't get these cloud you don't get logged in with a specific cloud provider. And it also depends on how you strategize and how you build your application.
So basically, it's better to go with the multi-cloud rather than sticking with one.
So it's again, you have to strategize it, right? I mean, you have to plan accordingly. I mean, having maybe it's not for everyone. Multi-cloud initiative is not for everybody because that also costs you, right? Because having two different cloud provider, and also it requires a lot of engineering effort where you're saying, okay, if one thing fails, you have to fail over to Google or something. But I mean, it's a good thing to think about. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Very good questions. Great questions today. Well, I see no more, so I'm going to thank Ashish and Mayank once again for their great presentation on cloud. You can reach out to them. Their numbers appear on the screen still for Signet Tech. And once again, this presentation probably will be available shortly. I imagine, Mayank, on your site, and I'll post it on mine as well. Thanks again, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. Watch for more presentations soon. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you.
All
All right, thanks everyone.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you.